time to talk about your health. Living a primal lifestyle.
You know, we have Tom from Tampa on the phone. Hey, Tom. Good morning. It's bright and early now, huh?
Hey, Paige. Good.
Hi, Tom.
How you guys doing, Nico?
Doing great.
Good. Hey, your newsletter's outstanding, man. I'm telling you, man, it is outstanding. And so is the Primal Edge. I love that stuff. I'd never be without it. I mean, I've been on it now 3-4 months, man. I mean, it's just, I can't get over how good I feel.
Primal Edge is, people are raving about it. People who are trying it, they know because you can feel it.
Would not be without it.
Call now, toll free at 1-877-927-6648. Internationally at 727-445-1044. Now your hosts, Nico DeHaan and Paige Clark.
Good morning, I'm Nico DeHaan. Welcome to Living a Primal Lifestyle, where we explore a return to a more balanced, natural, wild world.
To recover our natural health and regain our rights and freedoms. And I'm Paige Clark. Good morning.
And it's a beautiful day in downtown Clearwater, 77
Raining
degrees
last
and
night.
raining. Yeah, it's been raining for a few days, kind of washing away all the dirt,
I
which
told
is good.
you I woke up at 3:12 to a
Yeah.
bunch of bullfrogs.
Wow,
Yeah.
they're falling from the sky.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it seemed like.
If you have any questions or comments for the show, please reach me at nico@tfnn.com.
And me at Paige at TFNN.com.
We're taking your phone calls at 877-927-6648. So this was in the news the other day.
Yes, you know, this is kind of interesting. Flossing doesn't work. Healthy mouths require oil pulling instead, and we couldn't agree more. I don't know that I agree flossing doesn't work. I think there's some benefits to flossing, but this article says there's research that says not so.
A recent investigation by the Associated Press into the merits of flossing included a review of 25 studies regarding its protective effects compared to brushing alone. Found that available evidence for flossing is weak, very unreliable, very low quality, and carries a moderate to large potential for bias.
Well, we know that many primitive cultures
Didn't brush.
didn't brush their teeth, yet had beautiful health of their teeth and gums.
Yeah, and much
that's still
wider
today.
jaws, yeah.
Well, the whole dentition was formed better because of their nutritional intake.
Yeah.
And they suffered very little dental decay or mouth diseases. And so I think we have to realize there's something else at play. It's really your body chemistry, and your body chemistry is impacted by the foods you choose to eat.
Yeah, when I stopped eating the grains, specifically seed-based organisms, especially the grass seeds, which are the wheat, the rice, and millet, and all the things that we make bread and pizza things out of, when I stopped that, about a year or so later, I started having less and less problems with cavities, no cavities at all. Matter of fact, I have an old one that's still around, but what did happen was my when I got to my teeth cleaned, the hygienist noticed a big difference. I mean, commented that, well, we don't have to do much this time.
Well, we can tell a lot of what's going on, too. When people have plaque on their teeth, there's a sign of low stomach acid. And remember, stomach acid is to break down proteins. There's a lot of proteins. There are proteins in grains, too.
Sure.
And a deficiency of amylase, which is the digestive enzyme that's really active in our mouth, can cause our inability to break down the grains, and then a lot of those sugars, so to speak, stay on the teeth and provide food for the good and bad bugs.
Yeah, low carbohydrate diets specifically have more of an impact on healthy teeth. So if you stop eating the grains especially, but all forms of candy and, real sugary things, put the plaque there. Otherwise, the proteins and the fats tend not to.
Yeah, that's true, Nico. And what we know is that regardless of whether or not the studies for flossing, some people enjoy flossing. I mean, many people...
I still do it.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. And as I was sharing with you on the break before we started, one of my recommendations is to buy an ozonated coconut oil. We're going to talk about oil pulling using coconut oil or sesame oil, as the Ayurvedic practice did. But one of the great things you can do today is you can find ozonated coconut oil or ozonated olive oil, and then you can take that and put that on your dental floss. So then when you're flossing, you're actually kind of injecting ozone into those gum layers, because, as Nico mentioned, we're not just worried about dental and oral health, because we know of that strong correlation between our oral health and our dental health and our cardiovascular system. After all, in this area of the mouth, we have millions and trillions of capillaries. And that bloodstream, that's the beginning of the bloodstream where a lot of bacteria and so forth can be entered into the bloodstream and create cardiovascular issues.
Yeah, it also opened my eyes that the paleo style or primal style diet was the right thing if it doesn't produce cavities.
Well, it makes sense. And,
And that's the beginning of the problems. I mean, the mouth is always the first thing.
And that's what Weston Price saw.
Yeah.
Weston Price saw this rapid decline in the mouth health of his patients, and he began studying, and he realized it was the grains and the sugars and the refined foods. And another one of my favorites is Dr. Melvin Page. We talked about him a little bit last week. The Page Fundamental Diet. His diet, which by the way has no grains, refined. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But he does include a lot of green vegetables with minerals and some healthy fats such as butter and olive oil and coconut oil now, I guess he would include.
Sure.
But he was able to balance over 10,000, close to 10,000 people's body chemistries. And not only did they have better mouth health, but they had better overall body health.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yes.
So we recommend oil pulling better than flossing. He said I would recommend oil pulling with coconut oil. I use the sesame oil. I like the nutty taste of it.
And sesame oil is actually where it originally began.
Right.
But then again, who knows? Maybe in different parts of the country and in Asia they've been doing it. But the idea is these oils have, not only do they have antioxidants, but they have antibacterial agents in them.
Coconut pulling is performed by swishing 1 tablespoon of pure virgin coconut oil or other sesame oil, whatever you want to use, in your mouth for 10 to 20 minutes. The oil is then spit out into the trash or compost and carrying with it all the bacteria and germs.
Absolutely. And, you can make your own coconut oil-based toothpaste by adding a little baking soda and some essential oils, and that can actually make it real pleasant to use as well because you get the benefits of the essential oils.
The benefits of coconut oil pulling include helping to prevent tooth decay by lowering the presence of bacteria, such as Staphylococcus, reducing the bad breath, gum inflammation, reducing the stained teeth, dry mouth, sore throats, swelling, cavities, cracked lips, and even jaw pains. It's also good to get rid of cold sores naturally.
Well, because it's antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral. Coconut oil has laurycin, which is a very potent antiviral. So coconut oil helps you stay away from, so it's really great to have it in your diet because it helps fight viral infections, which is what the common cold is.
Yeah, and here they recommend doing it 3-4 times a week. Be careful not to swallow the oil.
A lot of people do it every day, and
I do it every morning.
It really does help to whiten your teeth.
I think it does too, and a little peroxide afterwards, after you brush your teeth, kind of balances everything out for me. And the peroxide is a natural way to whiten your teeth without going through those strips, which are really.
Remember, I told you that someone shared with me yesterday, and I had never thought of this. I think one of the reasons they don't have enzyme-based toothpaste is because the enzymes would start doing their thing once they were in a toothpaste. But if you open up a digestive enzyme capsule and put a little bit of that powder on your brush, it really helps to, after all, the enzymes break down the biofilms.
And they're live, they're living organisms.
They're living organisms, and they go in there. We know that we need a lot of new exciting research into probiotic-based toothpaste that re-inoculate, but also the enzymes to get the bad stuff off. So I'm going to give that a try. I'll let you guys know how it goes.
Yeah, that's
Open up the
pretty cool.
enzymes.
Okay, we're going to take a break here. Please take time to look at our Health Signals newsletter. I got a new one coming out now. Actually, next week.
Yes, it's good stuff. It's always good stuff.
And pick up some Primal Edge, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
And welcome back to Living a Primal Lifestyle. I guess yesterday, medical marijuana delivered for the first time in Central Florida, medical marijuana. And boy, I guess for this person it couldn't have happened, couldn't come soon enough. She'd been suffering with a brain tumor.
Yeah, this, of course, started 2 years ago. In 2014 is when they passed this for people with really big problems, epilepsy, brain tumors.
Right, very limited medical conditions is what we have here in Florida, but apparently it was delivered on Monday in a doctor's office in Orange City on Monday.
Yeah, so things are going to change. Of course, on the ballot, we have now an amendment to make it legal here for medical marijuana. It looks like maybe this time it'll pass. It was like a narrow margin.
Yes,
of course,
it
we
really
have
was.
it legal in quite a few states now for medical marijuana, and a couple of states for recreational. So, things are changing. What I do want to go over is some of the Florida laws, because I think it's important that people know that this is still illegal, and if you get caught with certain amounts, it can be devastating to your career, your life, everything. The possession of 20 grams or less of marijuana is a misdemeanor punishable by a sentence of 1 year imprisonment and a maximum of $1,000 fine. Very seldom do they give the imprisonments these days.
Yes.
20 grams or more is 5 years or $5,000. Any person with 25 pounds gets 5 years or $5,000. It's a felony, however, instead of the misdemeanor. Then if you're going real big, between 25 pounds or 2,000 pounds, boy, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's probably not too smart.
No, 15 years, 25 years. So it goes up from there. You can get, real big fines here for marijuana in Florida.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, this is just a sad state of affair. Here we've got a plant that's been around and used for eons for both recreational and medical reasons. Yeah. And yet we, in Florida, actually, some of you guys may not know that, we have the dubious reputation of being the state that has the worst situation with the pill mills. The pharmaceutical, painkiller clinics that just dispense these pharmaceutical painkillers like candy. And this is very disturbing to me. And yet we see people that go to jail or have serious fines based on marijuana, and we actually know our brains were designed. We have receptors in our brain.
No, we're going to go over some of that, too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of get this out of the way because, there's really stiff penalties. One thing, if it does pass this year, in a couple of years, we could have marijuana being medically prescribed.
Right.
And, of course, a lot of doctors will prescribe that.
So what you're saying here now is that you're allowed to have it with just this very narrow situation with people with brain tumors or epilepsy and seizures. Limited, and the doctors that can prescribe it now have to take an 8-hour class. But what you're saying is the next step would be that we have widespread ability for doctors to prescribe it. Like California, where it's not just brain tumors or...
Right, just about anything. Anybody over 65 can pretty much get it, which is good news for
pain
a lot of people.
And aches and pains.
Yeah, and it really does work. And, of course, the strains these days, if you are being educated in this, is that they are strain-specific now. So, in other words, if you want to be alert, you take a sativa. If you want to go to sleep or you want to just relax, you take an indica. So there are different blends that they're doing. They have
different species that produce a different effect.
And if you go to Leafly, which is an app which you can get on your Android or your iPhone, it really gives you all the different strains that are out there, what
What's
people
it called?
like. Leafly.
Leafly.
Yeah. And it's a good source of information if you want to know what you're taking and you know what the name of it is. And most of the people now do know what they're taking, which is, I think, a big step in the right direction because you really need to, the trouble with legal drugs is that you don't know what you're getting.
Right.
And that just goes from, things like marijuana, but it also goes to all these different pills. It goes to the heroin that's out in the street and the ecstasy, MDA, and things like that. So knowing what you're taking is a big thing. In the 60s, we kind of knew what we were doing a little bit, but often not, and we know people OD'd on things.
Well, in the 60s, I think everybody just...
Well, we were all experimenting, but the drugs were a lot purer back then. But now, in the state of marijuana, I would say that we know a lot more about marijuana, and there's a lot more strains out there, and we know specifically what these strains do. And I think that's very, very helpful if you're using marijuana. And a lot of people are, and we're finding that this is a very, very helpful thing.
Well, as I mentioned, we have the cannabinoid receptors in our brains.
Yes, we do.
And it's very important for us to understand that this is the way we were created, and there's a lot of... They're there to receive this plant's medicine. And I think we need to get out of judgment and start looking at the science on marijuana and realize that anything can be abused. And we certainly have a situation where people are abusing pharmaceutical drugs, even over-the-counter drugs, as we talked about. I mean, Tylenol, for God's sakes, is causing people to become less empathetic to their fellow man. This is something that we we do take like candy. It's over the counter and so forth. And I think we have to pay attention to what we're choosing and get more educated on the benefits of medical marijuana and the risks, I think.
Yeah. And there's a site that's called
FloridaMarijuanaInfo.org.
And the site is a little slow to get up, but a lot of information on here. They really make it look pretty, too. So this is good. So I haven't delved into this, but this gives you a lot of information. I'm sure in each state there will be different things that can help you, get the information that you need, and whether you want to use it or not is going to be strictly up to you. There's a Florida Cannabis Act that's from 2016, and this is going to allow medical marijuana in Florida beginning probably the first of the year.
So this is what we'll be voting on fairly soon, probably in the November ballot. Is that correct?
Yep.
What does it say? Support needed to collect a minimum of 68,314 valid signatures to have it get the ballot, I guess.
Which is done already, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's going to be on the ballot. And last time, I think we lost by like a 1 or 2 percentage points.
Right, but I think maybe it'll be different this time.
I think it would. I think people are more educated on it, more open to it, and certainly we have a lot of people in Florida that are elderly, over 55, over 65. So that's a huge demographic that can use marijuana safely, and both recreationally, I think, and probably medically too.
Well, I think it perhaps creates an opportunity to relieve stress. Older people have stress too. I mean, fear of getting sick or being alone or death even. And I think that for a lot of people, they can get that. But maybe some other people feel like it makes them more paranoid. What do you think? That could again come back to the species, right?
Yeah, it really is the species. I think these days you can take it and you're not paranoid. You're much more aware and alert. I know I talk to people in the jiu-jitsu world, and a lot of people in the jiu-jitsu world are taking marijuana in various different forms, whether it's edible, whether it's smoking it, or whether it's the oils that they're using, which is called, I think...
CBD oil.
Yeah, CBD oils and other things. It's great for pain, naturally. It's great for your head. But, yeah, there are strains that make you paranoid, but there are lots of strains that don't make you paranoid. And like I said, if you educate yourself a little bit on this and try it, then you can find out what is good for you.
I think the key thing is, and I want to go into this article that shows that the DEA, or the Drug Enforcement Agency, deliberately blocks beneficial science to perpetuate the war on cannabis. And we want to get into this more, but I think the bigger picture is when we have all these dangerous pharmaceutical chemical soups out here that anyone can choose from, why would we deny people right to a natural plant-based medicine that can help millions and millions of people? So we'll get right back on this and figure out why we're not getting the right science released to us about this.
We'll be right
healing
back, folks.
plant.
877-927-6648. We're in the weeds here. Welcome back to the show, folks. Though it probably comes at no surprise, a new report confirms the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, systematically thwarted research in both cannabis and MDA for medicine and potential rescheduling the drug. They found in their report the federal government maintains an unjustified monopoly on research-grade cannabis, preventing independent producers from contributing any scientific study. Of course, that's changing.
Well, and that's kind of what's been the problem, is that, we've known, even anecdotally, we've known from traditional cultures the benefits of this plant, but they're not allowing that in. Instead, they're kind of controlling the research. And, this report actually states that the DEA has had 4 decades of impeding and rejecting science. It's a compilation of case studies that illustrate this pattern of behavior, that the agency has an inability to exercise its responsibility in a fair and impartial manner, or to act in accord with scientific evidence. And this is often carried out by the administrative judges we have today.
Of course, the DEA, and this has happened with guns too, is this is a great source for a legal trade for government agencies that want money that they don't have to disclose. So when you capture lots of marijuana, you capture lots of cash also. and
Guns
equipment and
yeah.
guns and equipment and everything like that, which is used by the agencies, all the different agencies, local or state or national, both. So, this is kind of thing is kind of like what happened in the 20s when we had prohibition on alcohol. We now have prohibition on these other drugs. I'm just wondering what will happen. Of course, when this all becomes legal in the state of Florida, we have hundreds and hundreds of people that are in jail because of marijuana-related things. Most of it trafficking, but there's a lot of things in there, a lot of people in there that have been just smoking it or just dealing it.
Well, that's
a
the
low
thing.
level.
They won't give it up because it's a moneymaker for the court systems. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, Will's a lawyer. He tells me that, so a lot of this is just the perpetual situation of keeping that cash flow going.
Yeah.
And this is interesting, in line with the DEA's disregard for science, the DEA was surprised when a number of well-respected mental health professionals really requested a hearing about the intent to list the subject as a Schedule I. And this one psychotherapist wrote, "I would regard the scheduling of this drug as a scientific calamity. On the basis of the review of the literature concerning the use of this drug in psychotherapy and on the basis of reports from highly respected colleagues who have experimented with MDMA as an adjunct to psychotherapy, I implore you to leave the door open for further research, exploration, and study in this area. By opposing any rulings that would restrict the use of MDMA, such that scientific investigators and psychotherapists would no longer have free and uncomplicated access." This was talking about the MDMA. You all may know of that as ecstasy in today's, but the original form was untainted and now today, because of it being illegal, there are forms that are perhaps not as...
I was listening to a podcast by McKenna.
Terrence McKenna.
It was his brother, actually, that was on this podcast, and my wife Ellen and I were listening to it, and they were talking about it, that it came in the late 60s, early 70s, a nice pure form, and they were experimenting with it. I never tried it. I had done acid a couple of times and mescaline and things like that, but... I was kind of over that part of my life. It does make you explore certain things and certain aspects of your consciousness, and I think that's an important step. But, you have enough. I've had enough, and I never got into the MDA, although people say it's a fantastic drug, not the street version, which is ecstasy, because you never know what's really in it unless you get a good form of it. And the thing with marijuana is that most of the time you know if it's a pure product or not.
I think it comes back to what my comment with all this, and I can't say because I don't have experience with any of that, but what I can say is I don't like the judgment because I think that these are probably more helpful than hundreds of the drugs that are available at just walking into a pharmacy today. I think that we have access to things that damage our bodies, that are not healthful, that pad the pockets of pharmaceutical companies, and yet we have some of these things that may actually help us. Perhaps MDMA really helps us be more like our spiritual selves. And maybe it opens up receptors that allow us to be more the inquisitive, loving beings that we are. That's what I've heard about that it makes you feel very loved towards everyone else. And that's what we're supposed to feel. And you wonder if perhaps by keeping us from these substances, are we not really reaching our soul potential? Could be.
Well, there's a real culture behind drugs itself. I mean, people who smoke marijuana, a real culture, the words change, your buddy, hey, how you doing, all that kind of thing. But that happens with a lot of things. It happens with jiu-jitsu. It happens with, if you're a tennis player, probably, you get into the culture of it. So that in itself is not bad. But there are, I think, things coming out now that marijuana removes toxins for Alzheimer's, the protein in Alzheimer's.
Right, because we've got those receptors in our brains. But, just I wanted to finish this one point.
Right ahead.
I mean, think about this. These two drugs, MDMA and marijuana, are both still Schedule I drugs, despite the fact that they have all this proof. Schedule I says there's no health benefit to them. That's crazy. The research is overwhelming that there is, and that there's danger to them. And someone was admonishing the DEA for the absurdity of maintaining cannabis as a Schedule I drug
that is ridiculous,
with no medical benefits. And this gentleman, Gregor, this is Governor Christine Gregori, filed a petition with the DEA requesting the rescheduling. And she says, people weak and sick with cancer, multiple sclerosis and other diseases and conditions suddenly feel like, or in fact become, lawbreakers, and that's crazy. We shouldn't, especially when we take a look, as I said again, that the toxic chemicals that we're giving out as pharmaceutical drugs, and with no concern. I think it's just insane.
But I think the push to legalize at least the medical part of it, or maybe the recreational part of it, is driven by another thing, which is money. So it's really maybe not driven by, yes, this is so great and this is really good for us, so let's do it. It's more, it says, well, look at the money we can make, and that's what I'm hearing on the other side too. So it's not this puritanical thing that's going on saying, hey, we're opening this up because we know how great it is. No, that's not what's happening. But I think it's good that it is coming out, because this can help a lot of people, and certainly people in jail or being fined for this is outrageous. And I think it's time to start buying some radar detectors and things like that, because if this becomes legal, the police are going to have to do something else. Instead of getting the guy off the street, they're going to be more traffic stops and things like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, they've got to make sure they hit the budget, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And that's something to be concerned about. Well,
so I think after the break, let's go into some of these diseases that seems to be helping, like the Alzheimer's, like the brain diseases, and just the general things that they're talking about. Cancer in this. They're talking about a weed helping you in exercise.
Yeah, I think that it's important to realize that there's a lot of benefits to this plant. And it's not just psycho-spiritual, it's actually physical. And the evidence is there. And the more we become aware of that, it becomes very clear that we are really doing a disservice to ourselves and our fellow man by denying people access to it. In other words, having to determine whether or not they want to be a lawbreaker or perhaps have some relief from some pain that nothing has provided before. So we'll definitely get into discussing that.
Just enough time, folks, for you to get my Health Signals newsletter, Health Signals, and also the Primal Edge daily supplement. And Paige and I will be back in a couple minutes. Welcome back, folks. We're talking about medical marijuana and this thing.
Is weed healthy?
Is weed healthy? I think it is in lots of different ways.
Well, the truth is marijuana, although it's extremely controversial to a lot of people, it has been proven to be effective. And for a lot of medical issues, despite what the DEA and their scheduling says, it is effective in pain.
Yeah,
it helps with epilepsy and seizures, muscle tension, anxiety, depression, nausea, cancer, anorexia, insomnia, post-traumatic stress disorder, Crohn's and colitis, and much, much more.
Yeah, this comes out of a documentary called The Science of Weed, and you can just Google that and come up with it. I'll be putting in the newsletter, of course. And this is a documentary that really talks about the CBD's hemp oil.
Right.
And especially for children who have epilepsy and related types of diseases like that.
And the CBD oil, cannabidiol, does not give the high feeling.
The THC part.
That the THC does. So think of your three-letter acronyms, THC and CBD. And yet both of them have health benefits. But for a lot of people who oppose, that's why it floors me a little bit that people, don't realize that the CBD oil, which is just a component of the hemp plant, has all these health benefits, but it has none of those psycho effects, psychedelic effects, if you want to call it that, that people are concerned about with the THC. And I just think it's crazy that we're denying that right to people to have that access. Yeah,
so I recommend watching these types of documentaries because it will open your eyes. And this one's especially... it's been out for a couple of years. So
The Science of Weed. Yeah, you might want to just Google it and see it. And let's talk a little bit about the effect of marijuana on exercise. And as it becomes more mainstream, there's now 7 states that have that are preparing for legalization, hot on the heels of the state of Washington, Colorado, Oregon, Alaska. In Washington, D.C., that's interesting. An increasing number of athletes, including triathlete Clifford Janinski, a future athlete that's been on a lot of podcasts, says there seems to be a tremendous turn towards marijuana as a training aid for athletes. And I think that's kind of interesting. I wonder I wonder what the effects are, what they're seeing.
Well, my first experience was I first moved down to Florida, and I was running in the running game, and I had a guy who was a neighbor of mine. He says, "Boy, you run really good." He says, "I want to hook you up with a guy up in Juneau, Florida. He's a favorite runner of mine. He runs kind of like you every day." He says, so I gave the guy a call, Ron, and so I get to his house. This is really something else. These guys were smoking a joint, so I come in, smoke a joint with the guys. Boom, they take off. They said, "We're going 7 mile run." Boom, they're gone. And they're going down the road. I barely have my shoes on, you know. Took them to mile 5 to catch these guys. And finally, I outran them both. It was kind of a story that we tell. It was they were trying to, you know, really get to me. And I finally beat them at the end. But that was a cool story. But the thing was, when I smoked a little bit of that, I went out the door, I felt myself being dragged down. And after a couple of miles, then the effect started coming. And then I got that runner's high along with the marijuana high, and it did seem to boost my performance, but I never really used marijuana in that way, and I still don't. But it does seem to work, and I think now with your choices of the different strains and knowing where they come from, knowing what they do, probably can help you in exercise, no doubt about it.
I can only, that little meme that you have up there,
Yeah.
I can only get that runner's high by smoking pot before I run and then not actually running.
Yeah, well, that's definitely one way. Well, it can make you relax. It can make you do lots of things. So,
but let's talk about this, because since pot has long been known to alleviate pain, decrease nausea, improve the mood, it's no surprise that if we're seeing increasing uses of marijuana, we're going to see it both in athletic and recreational use, as many athletes are facing multi-hour grueling training regimes and who are turning to versions of weed that don't harm the lungs, such as vaporizing it, edibles, and pot-based energy bars, you know, and even 100% legal and highly absorbable CBD oil extracts, as we just mentioned earlier.
Yep.
And many of these athletes are swearing by using marijuana or its isolated active ingredients, such as THC or CBD oil, as performance-enhancing drugs, saying these substances actually ease anxiety and increase pain thresholds so they can push themselves during workouts.
Yep.
And others say that that smoking pot disintegrates their motivation to work out, and instead they find themselves going for those snacks and so forth. Again, that may very well be the reason that, as you mentioned, there's different species of the plant.
Yeah, there's species that don't make you hungry. That don't, you know, there are things that do make you hungry naturally, and this is important for people who don't have an appetite. You get older, you have cancer, maybe your appetite isn't up, you need some kind of fuel, so that can help. And the reverse, not making you hungry, is advantageous to many other things too.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But you know, of course, it is banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency,
Yep.
WADA, and the United States Doping Agency, USADA, and the NCAA. But you know, we wonder if it's actually really beneficial for helping athletes when they're not in that situation. And do THC and CBD oil actually, or other ingredients in marijuana, enhance athletic performance on a molecular level? That's an interesting question. And
Well, of course, we know the cannabinoids mimic a lot of things that are happening naturally in our brain and in our body.
right, we have receptors
Yeah.
for the cannabinoids. And, you know, so Ben Grenfield, who has a great podcast and website, Ben Grenfield Fitness Systems, he attempts to answer that question. Are there other things on a molecular level that happens? And as they dove into the science, they started looking at some of the studies to see you know, what happens to your body when you consume marijuana, and are there benefits? So we might want to talk about some of those.
Peak blood concentrations of cannabinoids occur in 3 to 8 minutes after you first inhale, as opposed to 60 or 9 minutes after you eat, or if you use the oil container.
If you eat the weed.
Yeah, eat the weed or eat the candy or even the oil.
Right.
With neutral effects beginning after 20 minutes, neural effects beginning after 20 minutes, maximizing within a range of 2 to 4 hours. Cannabinoids bind cannabinoids receptors, easy to remember, huh? On neurons and
Peripheral cells.
Peripheral cells.
Which that's your peripheral cells. That's where a lot of the effects of hormones or any effect is. It's actually the peripheral cell level.
Yeah, receptors which are normally engaged by natural endogenous substances called
endocannabinoids.
Right, that your body already makes, but this also can be bound by substances from other
Exogenous
sources.
outside sources. So what we're saying is, as I mentioned, we have those endocannabinoid receptors in our brain. Our brains are looking for these substances to plug in. Think of the lock and key. And THC binds cannabinoid receptors mainly localized in the brain, while CBD oil binds mainly on immune cells. So there's a lot of complicated chemistry into this plant medicine. You know, there's a lot going on here that can be beneficial to us, and we need to not be judgmental of just the abuses that we've known, but we need to look at the science that's emerging.
The dosing is important too, and after the break, I think we'll get into the dosing part of it and where you can get more information about.
We'll uncover a little more about the human endocannabinoid system, which we are born with, the system to utilize these kinds of molecules in our bodies for healing. The receptors are found on every cell surface. So
We'll
stay
be right
tuned.
back.
We'll be right back.
The number here is 877-927-6664.
And welcome back. And we're talking about some of the health benefits of marijuana. And I wanted to real quickly just really highlight the human endocannabinoid system. The CBD, CBN, and THC fit like a lock and key into existing human cell receptors. And these receptors are part of the endocannabinoid system, which impacts physiological processes affecting pain modulation, memory, appetite, plus anti-inflammatory effects and other immune system responses. And the endocannabinoid system comprises two types of receptors, CB1 and CB2, which serve distinct functions in human health and well-being. So folks, what we're really saying is that we were designed to have these plant chemicals be received in our body. And so our CB1 receptors are primarily found in the brain and the central nervous system, and they use them to a lesser extent in other tissues, okay? And CBD does not fit CB1 or CB2 receptors, but has powerful indirect effects still being studied. However, CB2 receptors are mostly in the peripheral organs, specifically cells associated with the immune system.
Yep.
So these receptors are found on cell surfaces, and you know we're designed to actually utilize these services.
Yeah, effects of marijuana differ enormously depending on the strain, and each type contains varying amounts of cannabinoids. A good source to examine these is the before mentioned Leafly, which is the Yelp of marijuana, and extensively reviews on there. They make recommendations for the mood and the type of activities that you can get into. Generally, because the majority of folks seem most interested in the THC properties of the weed, most marijuana strains have developed over time to increase these THCs, but they're also increasing the other things too. So the sweet spot for mild psychoactivity is about 2 to 3 milligrams THC.
That gives you the feeling of having one to two drinks.
Yeah,
right?
kind of, and mostly the doses are done at 5 and 10 milligrams. If you get the candy and things like that, it tells you what's in it and how much there is in it, and typically a hit is like 5 milligrams and a double dose is 10. But, so, you know, you can regulate yourself that way and take it. So in this, of course, we're running out of time. It's kind of like different. If you're high on marijuana, the time seems to go on forever. When you're talking about it, the time seems really short. So does it affect athletic performance?
There's research that shows it does. By the way, if you wanted to kind of pick up on where we leave off, this is the effect of weed on exercise at bengreenfieldfitness.com.
Very good, and this is going to be in the September issue of the thing. Well, we're going to do like a marijuana issue in September. So
okay.
Just so you can go over all these things and you can study it for yourself. And
But there's a lot of great information about how it affects exercise performance, how it affects muscle growth, and your performance and your
specifically what weed does to your hormones also.
Yeah, that's
because
another
hormones
thing.
are critically important for overall health. Is important. It's important to understand how marijuana affects these systems. So we're going to have that in the newsletter too. And there's various different things, and the different strains, of course, give you different things. Other thing is a question often asked: does weed make you fat?
Well, this is interesting. I want to read this about.
Okay.
I'd like to explore this a little farther. It says, for instance, marijuana has been shown to suppress the HPA axis in both human studies, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and this suggests varying effects on it in both males and females. A realistic dose of THC immediately lowered male and females' luteinizing hormone and raised the dangerous stress-associated hormone cortisol, which may underlie the paranoia some users experience. See, I remember that a lot in high school, feeling more paranoid when I smoked pot, that everyone was like, oh, look at her, she's stoned.
years of taking these things out, the undesirable parts.
That actually may be a physiological thing, that it actually activates the cortisol, you know? So that's a concern, too.
A lot more stuff, folks. And we have in here also a way to make pot-infused energy bars at home. So we'll include all that stuff, and we'll pick up the subject again.
Well,
Thanks for sticking around.
I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next show.
Definitely out of here.
You're watching Tiger TV.